Hello, welcome in. Today I just wanted to talk about the books that I have read in October. I think I might try and get back on a monthly wrap-up schedule. So October was a pretty good month for me. I read some good books. I read, autumn and Halloween themed books, and I just love that. How was your October? Did you also get to read what you wanted to read in October? I would love to know. Or did you get to do anything else fun? I tried to make October really festive this year and do a lot of activities and stuff. And we had trick-or-treaters this year, which was so exciting. I've never had trick-or-treaters before, and I honestly didn't think we would because it's not really a big thing in Germany, and I think especially in our region. So we were not prepared. I didn't have any candy because I thought, okay, well, people don't really do that here. And then suddenly our doorbell was ringing off the hook. So I actually ran on foot down to the grocery store and bought a bunch of candy, like Googling on my phone while I'm running how to say Happy Halloween in German and stuff like that. Like it made me really happy actually. So anyways, it was a really good month for me. I hope that it was a good month for you as well. And I'm just gonna start talking about the books that I read. And I'm just gonna go in order. So the first thing that I read in October was If We Were Villains, which is my best friend Allie's favorite book, which I have been meaning to read forever, and I'm glad I did because this was so good. It is about a group of theater students who are studying drama at this school. Basically, the friend group has a lot of drama of its own, you could say. And one day, one of them ends up dead, and another one of them ends up going to prison for being involved in that death. And we don't really know what actually happened and what the truth is. Yeah, it was really good. I loved the way that Shakespeare was so intertwined in the story. It kind of mirrored all of the really unstable dynamics and tensions in the friend group as this all is happening. And I loved it. It started off a little bit slow, but I think once you get to the point where you remember everyone's name and can differentiate between the characters, it starts to get so good. The next book that I read was Rouge by Mona Awad, who is the author of Bunny, which I really loved. I did not like this as much as I liked Bunny, but it was still good. This book is about a woman who is dealing with the recent death of her mother, and also kind of with all of the legacies that her mother left for her, especially this obsession with beauty and skincare that her mom instilled in her from a really young age. And she ends up getting lured into this really weird fancy spa that is supposedly, gonna give her fancy facial treatments and stuff like that. But of course it ends up being something much more sinister. And the book really had the same vibe as Bunny as far as being just really bizarre and really surreal, feeling like a fever dream where nothing is really making complete sense, which I loved about Bunny. But I think that in Rouge, for me personally, things were sometimes just like a little bit too wonky donkey and too weird and out there. And I do think that it had some really interesting commentary on stuff like beauty standards, especially like Eurocentric Western beauty standards, because our main character is biracial. But I also feel like within all of the wonky bizarreness of the story, I don't actually know if the commentary was anything super special or groundbreaking. And yeah, I feel like I wasn't invested in this as much as I was with Bunny, but it was still a pretty good, pretty interesting read. The next book that I read was Vampires of El Norte, which was so good. I loved this so much. It was wonderful and beautiful and probably my favorite thing that I read this month. I do think that the gothic horror vampire story marketing of this book is a little bit misleading because there are vampires, but honestly that's all just kind of background. The story itself is more of a historical fiction romance, which I loved. It's set in Mexico in the 1840s, so it's during the Mexican-American War, and the main character, her name is Nena, and she's the daughter of a ranchero, so her family is very wealthy and they own this land, but her family's estate is kind of at risk of being invaded by the Americans who are coming to steal their land. Then the other main character, his name is Nestor, and he is a vaquero who works for Nena's father. And they grew up together as children and they are best friends and they have this really strong bond and love for each other. But of course, as they get older, the social class dynamics between them become a problem. And then one day, many years later, they are reunited under circumstances with like the war. There are vampires in the background. Again, they are there, but honestly, the focus is really the historical time period, the war, and their romance of these two beautiful characters. Highly, highly recommend. Also, the audio audiobook was incredible. I listened to this on Librofm, which you know I love. It's an audiobook platform where when you purchase a book, you can choose to have your money support a local or indie bookstore. I love it. There is a link down below if you would like to check it out. Okay, the next thing that I read was also a favorite of the month. I loved it so much. That was Slewfoot by Brom. This is set in New England during the colonial Puritan witch trial days, and our main character is a girl named Abatha. And the problem is that Abatha is not very good at being the kind of like lifeless furniture that the Puritans wanted women to be during this time period. You know, she has a personality, she has opinions, she speaks in public, right? She's in the middle of this land dispute with her brother-in-law. He's trying to steal her farm. Her circumstances now are just really impossible, and she ends up meeting a forest spirit of some kind named Samson, who she doesn't really know. Like, is he a forest spirit? Is he some kind of old pagan god? Is he the devil? The devil himself? Abatha doesn't know, but this is him, by the way. And he is offering her help and support and, you know, a way to make it through these hard times when everybody else in her society is really just looking for ways to kick her down into the mud when she's already down, right? So of course she teams up with Samson, and of course that does not go very well with her goal of trying to fit in and live under the radar in her very Puritan community. And the story just kind of follows both of them. There are also chapters from Samson's point of view as he tries to figure out what he is as well, because he doesn't remember. He doesn't know what kind of deity he is. And yeah, I loved watching these two together kind of navigate a world that considers both of them so evil just because that's what they want them to be and need them to be to justify the way that they act, right? It's so good. I just love Brom and his books and his illustrations. This was so good and perfect for autumn and October, I think. The next book that I read in October was She is a Haunting, and this is a haunted house ghost story set in Vietnam. The main character is a teenage girl. Her parents are divorced and she feels that her dad abandoned them, and she really does not like him, but she's being forced to spend the summer with him in Vietnam at his house, which is this old French colonial home that he is renovating. And of course, a house from this time period has a history, and as she finds out, is very haunted. I really like the way this book used that haunting and ghost story to talk about the past and the colonialism in Vietnam. And I also really like that the main character was dealing with some pretty important topics, especially concerning identity, because she is Vietnamese, but being raised in America, she feels like she's not Vietnamese enough. And then she also likes girls, and she's dealing with her sexual identity as well. There's also all of her family stuff with her parents and her siblings, and it was just a really, really good, beautiful story. It was really creepy and weird, actually. Like, I say it was beautiful, but also it was really weird and creepy. There's a lot of bug horror in here, and sometimes I do feel like I was a little bit lost. Like, I didn't always know what was going on, but overall I think that this was really good. The next thing that I read in October was Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which was so fun. This is basically just a collection of little short scary stories, like the kind of things that you would tell around a campfire or at a sleepover, right? Some of them are really silly, some of them were really weird, and then the illustrations are just completely wild. Like, what is this? What is this? But my favorite thing about this book that I really appreciated was that the author put together a pretty detailed, like, annotated bibliography about where each of these stories came from, whether they were passed down through oral tradition from a certain time period, or they were urban legends from a certain region, or mythology or folklore. You know, like, yeah, they're just silly, goofy, scary stories, but also these are kind of pretty interesting oral traditions passed down in communities for sometimes generations, right? A cool thing to think about, and I really enjoyed this. And then I also watched the movie as well, and the movie was also pretty fun. And then the last thing that I want to talk about are two books that I read on the Choices app. I don't know if anybody else is using this or even wants to hear about these in a book wrap-up, but I am doing it. These are good reads, and I'm tired of pretending that they're not. Basically, this is an app for, like, interactive visual stories, right? Like, there's a bunch of different books that you can read, and in them you get to create your own character and make choices as the story goes, like a choose your own adventure type thing. A lot of them have romance elements where you can choose between different romance options, and it all kind of affects the way that your story plays out. It's like a book in the form of a silly little mobile game for your phone, right? But like I said, some of these are actually really pretty freaking good. And this month I read two that I absolutely love. It's actually a duology. The first one is called It Lives in the Woods, and then the sequel is It Lives Beneath, which you can probably tell is a horror story, and they were actually really pretty scary. So in the first one, It Lives in the Woods, you are a high schooler in a really cute small town, and you are in this friend group. When they were children, they had a really like horrifying, traumatizing supernatural experience in the forest. Now that they're all in high school, they think that it might be starting to happen again. And it's very scary. Obviously, the theme is that there is something sinister in the woods, some kind of evil force. And then the sequel, It Lives Beneath, is set in another small town in the same region, like connected to the same forest. And your character that you play as has just moved to this small town to move in with your grandfather because your parents were murdered. And when you get to this town, it becomes clear that there's a connection between the weird, supernatural, culty type stuff that's going on in this town and maybe what happened to your parents. And it ties in with the first story, and some of the characters from the first one show up again in this book, and it's just really cool. And I really liked it. So yeah, let me know if you use choices or if you want to hear more about the books that are on it, because I think that I'm going to start talking about them. I spent time reading them and enjoyed, and they deserve to be in a wrap-up too, I think. Anyways, that is everything that I read in October, so I'm gonna wrap up this video, but I would love to hear from you in the comments if you read anything cool this month or did anything cool this month. I just love to know what you've been up to. And yeah, that is it for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I hope that I get to talk to you soon. Bye!